My dad's fiancée framed me for theft to ruin our relationship, but her affair was exposed right before their wedding. Now she's out of our lives for good. I am James, 32 years old, and I always believed that family loyalty was a foundation of everything. But when my dad's fiancée, Karen, framed me for stealing from their household, I realized how wrong I had been. It was a plan so devious, it shattered the trust we had built over the years. As if that wasn't enough, Karen's affair was exposed right before their wedding, revealing the truth behind everything. It was the ultimate betrayal, not only from someone I considered family, but from the person who was supposed to be my dad's partner for life. Now, after everything she's done, she's finally out of our lives for good, but the scars still remain. This is the story of how one woman almost ruined my family, and how the truth came crashing down at the perfect moment. I grew up in a small, close-knit family where I was taught that no matter what happened, family should always come first. My father, John, and I had always been especially close. He was my rock, the man who always supported me, and the person I looked up to. I trusted him with everything, and we shared countless moments over the years that built the foundation of our relationship. But when he started dating Karen, his fiancée, things began to change in ways I never expected. Karen was always a bit distant. She never fully integrated into the family like I hoped she would, and honestly, I had some reservations about her from the start. She seemed to have this cool, almost detached demeanor, especially around family events. She never quite clicked with my siblings or me the way I had hoped, but I chalked it up to her being new to the family, and maybe I just needed to give her more time to adjust. I didn't want to cause any tension, especially with my dad so happy. After all, he deserved to find love after my mom passed away. But that didn't mean I was blind to everything. I could see how Karen would get impatient and snap at times, especially when things didn't go her way. Still, I tried to maintain a positive attitude and went along with everything, hoping it was just a phase. But then, Karen crossed a line I never thought would happen. I had no idea how deeply she could manipulate a situation to suit her own needs. And I certainly never imagined that she would do something that would completely tear our family apart. Little did I know, she was already plotting against me, and I had no clue what was coming next. As I mentioned earlier, my relationship with my father, John, had always been solid. He was always there for me, even through the difficult times when my mother passed away. It was his support that kept me grounded and motivated. However, things started to shift once he got involved with Karen. At first, I thought it was just a matter of him finding someone to share his life with, especially after my mom's passing. I thought I should be happy for him, and honestly, I wanted to be. But as their relationship progressed, I began to notice subtle shifts in the dynamics. Karen was very particular about her space. When my father first introduced her to the family, she made sure to establish some boundaries. She seemed very focused on keeping their relationship private, almost to a fault. She would constantly complain about the family gatherings, stating they were too noisy or too chaotic. It seemed like she wanted everything to revolve around her and my dad, and when she didn't get the attention she expected, she would sulk or make passive-aggressive remarks. The first real red flag for me was when my dad and Karen moved in together. The tension became palpable. I went to visit them one weekend, and as soon as I walked to the door, I felt the shift. The house was cold and unfriendly. I was greeted by Karen with a forced smile, and it was clear she was uncomfortable with me being there. My father, however, didn't seem to notice, or maybe he chose to ignore it. That visit was short, awkward, and left me with an uneasy feeling that something wasn't quite right. As months passed, the situation got worse. Karen's influence on my dad became more apparent. He started spending less time with me, and I felt like I was being pushed aside in favor of her. She subtly started dictating how family events would go, what kind of celebrations we could have, and even the conversations we were allowed to have. Every time I tried to speak up or voice concern, she would brush me off, saying things like, "You're too sensitive," or "It's just a small thing. Don't make a big deal out of it." But things took a drastic turn the day my dad called me to let me know that Karen was accusing me of stealing something from her. What started as a simple misunderstanding spiraled into something that completely shook my trust in both of them. It all started with a phone call that left me dumbfounded. I had just gotten home from work when my phone rang. It was my dad, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. Without much pleasantry, he got straight to the point. "Your stepmother is accusing you of stealing from her," he said, his voice cold. I was stunned. "What? Stealing from her? What are you talking about?" He explained that Karen had noticed something missing from her jewelry box. She was convinced I had taken a gold bracelet that had been passed down through her family. According to my dad, she said she'd seen me near it the last time I visited, and now the bracelet was gone. My heart sank. I had never touched anything of hers, let alone stolen it. I tried to explain to my dad, but he didn't seem to believe me. "Karen is upset, and you need to understand this is serious," he said. "If you're innocent, just help us figure out where it went." I was floored. How could my dad, the person who knew me best, think I'd do something like this? I had never stolen anything in my life, let alone from her. I knew I had to clear my name, so I immediately offered to come over and search the house for the bracelet. My dad agreed, and we set a time for me to come by the next day. As soon as I arrived, I could tell Karen was waiting for me, her arms crossed, glaring at me like I was a criminal. She didn't say a word as I entered. My dad, looking uncomfortable, showed me into the living room where I would start looking. I immediately began to search the areas Karen had mentioned, but I found nothing. The tension in the room was suffocating. Eventually, I reached her jewelry box, the one she had claimed I had been near. As I was opening it to check, Karen suddenly lunged at me, her hand swiping across the top. "Don't touch my thing," she snapped. I pulled back, surprised by her aggression. "Karen, I'm just trying to find a bracelet. I'm not stealing from you." At that moment, I noticed something that didn't add up. There was a small pile of receipts and notes at the back of the box. Things that didn't seem like they belonged in there. Curiosity got the better of me, and I sifted through them quickly. What I found stopped me in my tracks. A receipt for a large amount of jewelry that Karen had purchased not long ago. It wasn't the missing bracelet, but it was strange enough to make my stomach drop. The receipt was made out to Karen, but it was for pieces I had never seen before, ones that seemed far more expensive than anything she had ever shown my dad. "Karen," I said slowly, "you're accusing me of stealing, but you're hiding receipts for jewelry you bought? Why?" Karen froze, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. Before she could respond, my dad walked into the room, looking bewildered. "What's going on?" he asked. I pointed at the receipts and said, "Karen, you're accusing me of stealing, but you've been hiding things from Dad. What's going on here?" Karen quickly turned her back on us, her voice rising. "That's none of your business." But I had caught her off guard. My dad looked at the receipts and back at Karen, his expression changing. "I didn't know about these," he murmured. I knew then that something was off, and I had to find out more. What I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of unraveling the truth. The following days were tense, to say the least. I couldn't shake off the feeling that Karen was hiding something bigger than a missing bracelet. My dad, despite the discovery of the receipts, still wasn't convinced that Karen was involved in anything shady. It was as if he was blinded by his affection for her, unwilling to accept that the woman he was about to marry might be deceiving him. But I couldn't let it go. I spent the next few days quietly investigating, sifting through more of Karen's things when she wasn't around. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but there was no other way to clear my name. Every time I tried talking to my dad, he brushed me off, telling me to let it go and move on. But it didn't sit right with me. It wasn't until a week later that the truth finally came to light, and in the most unexpected way. I had gone over to their house again, this time with the intention of speaking with Karen directly. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to be brushed aside anymore. But when I walked in, something felt different. Karen wasn't home. My dad was in the living room, reading the newspaper, looking more frazzled than I'd ever seen him. "Dad!" I called out softly, stepping into the room. He looked up from his paper, his eyes tired. "Hey, kiddo," he said with a sigh. "I've got some things I need to tell you." I sat down across from him, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" He looked hesitant, almost like he was struggling to find the right words. I found out something about Karen." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "She's been seeing someone else," he confessed. "For months now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What? Are you serious?" He nodded grimly, his hand shaking slightly as he set the paper down. "I caught her last night. She was texting him. The same guy she's been seeing behind my back." I confronted her, and she didn't deny it. I felt like the world was spinning. After everything, Karen had been cheating on my dad, and I had no idea. The woman who had been accusing me of stealing was now the one caught in her own web of lies. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. The person who had been trying to ruin my reputation, to turn my own father against me, was now exposed. But at the same time, I felt terrible for my dad. His heart was broken, and I couldn't believe he had been so blind to the truth for so long. As my dad went on, explaining how devastated he was, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of anger and pity for him. How had he not seen the signs? How had Karen gotten away with it for so long? But in the end, I was relieved that he finally knew the truth. I wasn't sure what the future held for my dad and Karen, but I knew one thing for sure. She was no longer welcome in our lives. The days that followed were filled with confusion and emotional turmoil. My dad was devastated, torn between his hurt and his pride. It was obvious that Karen had used him for her own gain, manipulating him with lies and deceit. But even with all the proof in front of him, my dad had a hard time letting go. I think he felt humiliated. And as much as he tried to put on a brave face, I could see the cracks beneath the surface. His emotional struggle weighed heavily on him, and the guilt of trusting her began to eat him alive. It was evident that he was questioning everything, his choices, his judgment, and the future of our family. It was awkward between us for a while. He didn't know how to act around me anymore. I had exposed the woman he loved. No, the woman he had planned to marry. And for him, it felt like a betrayal, even though all I had done was tell the truth. He resented me for a little while, and the silence between us grew, as if an invisible wall had been built between father and daughter. He kept his distance, unwilling to confront the painful truth, and I couldn't blame him, but it still hurt. We were both reeling in the aftermath of his failed relationship, and it felt like the world around us was crumbling, but it was his own pride that ultimately broke him. After a week of avoiding the subject altogether, he called me one evening. "Can you come over, please?" he asked, his voice sounding hollow weary. "I need to talk." I could tell that the conversation was coming, but I wasn't prepared for how heavy it would feel. When I walked into his living room, he was sitting with his head in his hands, looking utterly defeated, a shadow of the man I once knew. The entire house felt cold, as though the warmth had been sucked out of it. "Dad," I said softly, sitting down next to him, feeling a tight knot in my chest. "What happened?" He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed, bloodshot from nights of sleeplessness. "I kicked her out," he said, almost in disbelief, like he couldn't quite believe what he had done. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, but there was a certain finality to it. My heart clenched. I never imagined I'd hear those words. It was almost like a weight had been lifted, but it was bittersweet. "You did?" I asked cautiously, not entirely sure how to process it. "I did," he repeated, nodding slowly. I couldn't take it anymore. I've been a fool, letting her control everything. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have listened to you. I should have protected you." I nodded, my own emotions still raw from everything that had happened. I had warned him, over and over, but he hadn't been ready to face the truth. I wasn't sure if I could forgive him for choosing her over me for so long, but seeing him now, broken and vulnerable, made me want to try. It wasn't about forgiving him immediately. It was about understanding that he had been a victim of his own emotional blindness. "You're not a fool, Dad," I said quietly, my voice trembling slightly. "You were just blinded by love. But you're still my dad, and I'm still here for you. We can figure this out together." We sat in silence for a long time, each of us processing the weight of everything that had happened. It felt like the air in the room had changed. A heavy tension still lingered, but there was a sense of understanding, too. We had both been through something painful, and now we had to rebuild from the ruins. As for Karen, she was out of our lives for good. My dad's friends and family were furious with her, and no one was willing to defend her. The scandal that had once been the center of our family drama faded quickly. Even though Karen tried to apologize and beg for a second chance, my dad knew better now. He didn't want her in his life anymore. And the truth was that I didn't want her in mine either. In time, my relationship with my dad began to heal. It wasn't an instant fix, and we both had a lot of emotional baggage to work through, but we were willing to try. He apologized for his blind trust in Karen, and I apologized for the tension between us. We both understood that we had been hurt, but in the end, we came together with a new sense of strength and mutual respect. As for Karen, she faded into the background of our lives, a distant memory of a lesson learned. My dad and I grew closer over the following months, and we made peace with the past. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Looking back, I know that the road to healing wasn't easy, but I also knew it was worth it. I had fought for the truth, even when it seemed like no one would believe me. I had gone to the hardest part alone, but now I had my dad back. The emotional scar was still there, but we had patched it together. I wasn't just fighting for the truth. I was fighting for our future, for the relationship that mattered most to me. And in the end, I had restored my relationship with my dad, and I had gotten rid of the toxic presence that had threatened to tear us apart. We had learned, grown, and become stronger for it. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.